So I'm going to call the meeting to order. Hopefully Mercedes will be on soon. And there's Mercedes, and hopefully Jim will be on soon. So Jackie, could you take roll, please?
Councilmember Such.
I'm here. Or I.
Committee member Toon.
I see her, but she's muted.
Hey, I'm here.
There she is.
Committee member Coleman.
Present.
Committee member Mansfield.
Here.
Committee member Duez.
Present.
Committee member Morales.
Here.
And Councilmember Garaventa.
I don't see him yet, Jackie, but he may be coming from work, so hopefully he'll be here shortly. May I have approval of would someone please approve the agenda?
I approve.
Thanks, Elisa. Second?
Well, second.
Thanks, Nikki. Okay, so I'm going to open the meeting up, as always, to public comment. Remember that you have 3 minutes. And
Don't forget to approve the consent calendar. So the
oh,
minutes.
sorry. Can someone approve the consent calendar, please? Sorry.
I move to approve.
Thanks, Mercedes. And the
I'll
second. Oh, Nikki will second. Thanks. Okay, I am now hopefully opening to public comment unless Jackie tells me differently. Remember, you can speak anything of anything not on the agenda, and we will limit your comments to 3 minutes. Beezy, you can begin. Hi.
Thank you, Colette. I'm only here for a short while this morning because I'm heading into my Wyandotte language class, but I'm very concerned and supportive of the work that you're doing, and I wanted you to know that I stand beside you in the process that you're going to be going through during the next, I guess, basically about 2 weeks, and I want you all to know that I'm rooting for you. But I also would like to share with you a document that I never knew existed, but I wanted to at least share portions of it. And that is the City of Sonora's Code of Ethics that was adopted by the City Council on December 16th, 2002. These are the ethical guidelines that every person who is, it says here, city staff and elected officials should be following the precepts that are outlined in this document. It is at the website. If you're not familiar with it, I urge everybody to make sure that you read it and maybe even memorize it and then live by it. So I'm just going to read sections of it. Point 1. Well, first of all, the opening. City staff and elected officials are committed to serving the public with highest integrity. In order to do so, we are resolved to, 1, be dedicated to the concept of delivering effective and efficient city services in a courteous and non-discriminatory manner. Now I'm going to skip to number 3. Refrain from public activities which may undermine the public's confidence in government. Number 5, be dedicated to handling problems on the basis of principle, justice, and civility. And finally, number 9, strive for fairness and impartiality in dealing with each other and with members of the citizenry and the press. So I share this with you as guiding principles for you that have been adopted by the board which oversees you and which some of you are aspiring to join, that this is the code of ethics by which our governance is supposed to conduct themselves here in the city of Sonora. So I wish you all the very best, and I'm going to thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Anybody else? And No, Nikki Coleman. Hi.
Good afternoon. My name is Nikki Coleman, and I'm speaking during public comment today as an individual citizen of Sonora and not on behalf of the Social Equity Committee. First, I'd like to acknowledge Miles McMahon's public apology for spreading misinformation to his congregation. One of the first steps in healing and truly unifying as a nation is to be vulnerable and admit when we have done wrong. It is difficult, and I recognize Mr. McMahon for that. In addition to the verbal apology, I did want to inquire if there were actionable steps planned to be taken to ensure a change of future in the conduct. To ensure a change in future conduct. While it is challenging and uncomfortable, we must hold leaders accountable when a misstep of this magnitude is made. Leaders in power in our community hold weight, and their opinions and statements have influence that individual citizens like myself do not have. When those statements are untrue, they spread like wildfire and have the potential to burn down efforts, progress, and positive headway that has painstakingly been made. While I understand that misunderstandings and miscommunication can happen, the decision of leaders to make statements with such damaging repercussions should not happen. When individuals take on the responsibility of becoming a leader, they also take on the responsibility of committing to be ethical and truthful in order to keep themselves and their institutions credible. I'd like to take this opportunity to call on our local leaders across the county, supervisors, councilmen, administrators, institution leaders, and ask for your commitment to truth and ethics. I'd like for you to take this opportunity to be reminded of the influence that you have and to use it in a way that is honest, dignified, and equitable. I'd also like to call on our community members and remind you that we all have a responsibility to bring light to situations that are unjust. We must hold leaders accountable who abuse their power in order to keep our community safe for all. With that said, I'd like to recognize 3 leaders who have made a commitment to stand in the light of truth. I wrote a letter to our city council last Tuesday ahead of the city council meeting, as I'm sure did many of you. I made a very simple request of each of them. I asked them to take a stand on the side of the truth. Politics, opinions, and emotions aside, I asked them to speak up for the falsehoods that were being spread by leaders in our community and to tell the truth. I'd like to acknowledge Councilwoman Such, Councilwoman Segerstrom, and especially Councilman Garaventa for, above all else, speaking the truth last Tuesday night. Truth takes courage, especially when you are shedding light on darkness.
30 seconds.
I commend you for standing for what is right and true. Regardless of differences, a commitment to virtue and honesty is something that we all should require of our leaders. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. So who wants to follow that? Sorry. Tristan. Hi, Tristan, you're up.
Well, I'd like to praise you all. I think you're doing a wonderful job. I'm rather flabbergasted. On June 3rd, 2020, I came down to see the protest against the murder of George Floyd. And I encountered a phenomena that set me back on my heels to see the people that were across the street and the way that we were chanting against the people. There's a big story that goes with that too that I can't unravel within my 3 minutes, but it refers to a candidate for the County Board of Supervisors. I came back the next week out of curiosity, the same way I came down the first time, and the Republican headquarters was open, and they were performing the same function as the group that was organized by the state of Jefferson and the 3 percenters, the Oath Keepers, the week before. I've been going back every single week ever since. And I appreciate what you're doing and what you have done and how you have recognized the history of Sonora. And I don't know what I can say other than just, geez, thanks.
Thanks, Tristan. Pat.
Hi. I just want to acknowledge Ann Segerstrom, who started off the discussion of the Social Equity Committee at last week's City Council meeting. And she gave definitions because a lot in the public comment at the previous meeting, people were talking about religion and critical race theory and socialism, Marxism, communism. And she took the time to look the definitions up and read them. And I thought it was quite powerful. And I encourage anybody who's interested in the Social Equity Committee to listen to that meeting, to that discussion. There was not public comment, but among the council people. And I also want to say, one of the points they brought up was that this committee is taking up staff time and taxpayer money. And I wonder why tonight we have 3 staff people attending this meeting. And are they attending on their own time? Or I know that that some people are required to, you need people to run the Zoom, etc. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out. I was surprised to see there's 3 staff people here. Well, of the names I recognize, so there might be more, I don't know. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Remember, you need to raise your hand. Use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. It's usually just a hand, a little golden colored hand. It says raise hand.
And if you're calling in, you can dial *9 to raise your hand.
It's under the More tab. If you're looking for the hand, you got to click More, and then it'll say raise your hand.
Or you could just raise your hand.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Hi, Miles. Could you unmute yourself?
There it is. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to apologize because I'm late. I was actually listening to some of your previous meetings, and I've listened to about 4 or 5 of them now. And so I got caught up in some of the definitions that were being given, and I ended up being late to this meeting. I intended to be there on time. Anyway, I did not hear everything that was said by a young woman, but I really just want to acknowledge that I'm here, and I hope that, my apologies have been heard by everybody. And if anybody has any other question for me, then I'm always available and happy to talk with anyone. That's about it.
All right. Thanks, Miles. Anyone else? No. Okay. All right. Well, let's begin. You should have, I think Jackie emailed some work that we've done on the resolution. And I'm sorry, Mercedes and Nikki and I actually met and did some work on it just to kind of bring it up to date. And I'm sorry, only 3 of us can meet at a time. So I apologize for that. But I think that, I would like to today go over the changes that we've made. And I think it will make a difference in moving the resolution forward. So if I could have, I don't know if Mercedes, if you wanted to share your screen, or Nikki, you wanted to share your screen.
Just one thing, Colette. I think that we need to approve the minutes.
Oh, sorry.
We did that.
Oh, with the consent agenda? Okay, yeah, right. Sorry.
It's okay.
Thanks, Mercedes, though, because I totally forgot about minutes. All right, so who would like to share their screen and put this new document up?
Jackie, can you make either Nikki or I co-host?
I made you a co-host.
Thank you. So so this is our agenda. So we are here, right?
Right, we approved that.
We're on
And
item number 2.
the resolution in progress is 913.
That's just the name of the PDF. It's the updated version.
Oh, it is, okay. All right. Okay, now we're starting with 8A. We talked about starting the resolution with the statement, whereas the city of Sonora recognizes this as an historic moment to be seized upon and believes we cannot answer this time in silence. We think that it would actually be more impactful to close the resolution with that statement. So curious if there are any comments about that or about that statement at all.
I like the idea of putting it at the end. It kind of adds kind of a powerful closing. So I agree with that.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree that it does. Any other comments? Any other thoughts about that?
I agree
Agree.
with that.
Yeah.
Sarah
Thanks.
and Nathan, if you guys had thoughts, I don't know.
Apologies, I am missing a piece of paper. I'm trying to look for it. I see it on the screen, so give me 2 seconds.
That's the statement that in the beginning said to answer this time in silence is to be complicit, and we took that out, complicit out. But we also just think it should be at the end. It should be at the end of the document, not the beginning. I think the beginning is better served as introductions and some the history a little bit.
I get you a copy instead of putting that in, take that to the end. I don't see an issue with that.
Okay. Nathan,
Yes,
how are you feeling about that?
as far as putting it at the end, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's a good close.
Okay. And then that we had a quote, the quote from Desmond Tutu that is the first quote here. And then we thought that really we should use a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. on this resolution. So, and that's, I think that's sort of a nice header to the actual resolution. So here it is. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow provincial outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds. And this is Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail. So, and you can kind of ponder that, just sort of wanted you to know the thought of that and to remove the Desmond Tutu quote, although it's, I think, a great quote. So
I love the MLK quote. Where was the proposed location of this in the resolution?
I actually thought it would be at the beginning,
Yeah.
but that's one of 7 opinions,
And
I like it at the beginning, but
and it sounds like a really good way to get started because it involves a lot of things about what equity really means that involve the whole community. mutuality network. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So it's a really big vision.
Yes.
Right. I agree with Mercedes. I think it in a way defines equity without explicitly defining it. And we've talked before about opening a resolution with a historical quote. I'd love to see it at the beginning.
Okay, let's move on to the whereas statements. And there were, in the previous documents, 2AC and 2B came next. And those are the two statements that acknowledge both tribes up here, both Miwok tribes. And we worked on combining 2A and 2B and 2C and just having one whereas statement. And we changed the wording just a little bit. Whereas the city of Sonora acknowledges the Tuolumne Band of the Miwok Indians and the Chicken Ranch tribe of Miwok Indians as the original inhabitants and stewards of this land, we continue to be strong. They continue to, who continue to be strong, beloved leaders and impactful contributors to our community. How do people feel about that?
It works. I'm looking at the changes made and the moving stuff around, and to the point, they contribute a lot still here. They do a lot still here, and I think it.
I think it's more concise, and it's not my writing, I will tell you that, but I liked it.
I like it.
You do? Oh, you got muted, Elisa. I don't know how that happened.
I like it as well. I like that it is more compacted and together. I have always had an issue with the contributors. I think casino and money. So I don't know if there's another way or another word we could use. Other than that, I like it, but if that one word, I get stuck.
The contributing that I see is I do see the reach out for the medical portion. I see for both sides. I see more than just money. I mean, if you called them up and sat and talked to them, it wouldn't be, hey, we'll give you money. It's let's come up with a solution together and actually do it, whether it's financial, whether it's planning, whether what it is. Most of them on both sides of the tribes that do different, they're really good about being and taking over situations that are not monetary. So I see where you're getting at there, but I think the contributing factor is some of the leadership that they have. I'll put Lloyd out there on Front Street. That guy is a loud guy. And if you called him and said, hey, I have a problem with this, he's going to be right there behind you, whether it's mentoring, whether it's anything that needs to be done. That's the kind of stuff. So I get what you're saying monetarily there, but it's more than just that.
Yeah. I mean, I actually felt that way as well. I understand what you're saying, Lisa. I felt like supporters wasn't quite right, because that felt much more like a monetary acknowledgement of their monetary contributions. But
yeah, because I agree. I mean, because it's not just money and, working, there's tons of areas, social work, AUD, substance use. There's a whole bunch of different areas. But if we're looking at what you kind of know of our area and dead on, I just hear that word contributors. I mean, even if maybe to move the words around, I'm not sure, but.
Well, let's think of another word we can come up with to put there. But the rest of it, you're okay with? Yeah, okay, great. All right. Then next is 1B, whereas the city of Sonora affirms its wish to be known not only for the beauty of its place in the Sierra Nevada foothills and its vibrant gold country history, the city wishes to also be known for being a champion of racial equity, justice, and acceptance. And I think we agreed on that one previously. It's why that one's not italicized. So if everyone can agree just to accept that one, that would be great. And then the next one, 1CE, I think. This is where we had, I believe, the statement about racial profiling, and we have removed that and put, whereas the city of Sonora is proud of its gold rush history, which created opportunities for many people. This period also demonstrated violence, exclusion, and unjust laws against Indigenous, Chinese, Mexican, Chilean, and other minorities. So I saw you shake your head, Darren.
Oh, sorry. People are texting
maybe-
me coming up with the wordsmithing for that last word, and I got an enrich weighing in my head.
Oh, I thought maybe you were cracking your neck. I didn't know. So I'm sorry. Where's enrich?
For the last one. So we'll go back to that one.
Oh, enrich. Oh, back to the Miwok.
And B,
No, the other one. Sorry. Well, let's do this one and then we'll talk about the other one. Don't
Okay.
get off topic.
okay.
All right. Yeah, I wasn't figuring out where we were putting enrich in this one. I couldn't, but I was looking for it. So how do people feel about that?
I have a comment. Oh, go ahead, Mercedes.
No, you go, Nikki. I go after.
I had a comment I wanted to share in regards to the removal of racial profiling. Of course, in our intention, I think in including it in this resolution in the beginning, obviously was to resolve that the city of Sonora was intolerant, to racial profiling. But one thing that I have discovered over the last couple of weeks in my talks with Chief and some of our officers is that they felt that by including it, it made them feel that they were doing something wrong. And so I think it's important to understand that our intention is very different than some people perceive. And with this resolution being a building block and a bridge builder, I think it's important that we keep that out as not to assume or accuse, and really take into account a lot of the work that many law enforcement officers are doing to not racially profile. I think there's other language that we're using that speaks to that, but in an effort to be considerate and build bridges, I think that it's important that in this context that we're paying attention and taking it out. And that's something that I've learned in conversation, and it's always important to kind of see both sides and put yourself in other people's shoes. And that is something lately that's spoken to me. So I'm glad we're having that conversation and considering removing it.
I just like to say that it is a good compromise. I think that in this particular statement, we are talking about the past. We can change the past, but we can acknowledge the past. So those are things that happen. And I think the compromise, and as Nikki was saying, a building bridge, is to not use the word, but to use what that means. And what that meant was violence, exclusion, and unjust laws. So we are, I think that most of us are okay with not using some words as long as we are keeping the real definition and sense of what we are talking about. And in this particular case, of course, that we are not talking about the modern police in Sonora, but we are talking about the past.
And I just would like to say that for me, that word meant something much more broad than police. It was racial profiling happened, I thought, in many different ways. But,
Yeah.
As both Nikki and Mercedes said, this is a building block here. This isn't we're not trying to make it worse or incite and I think it's important to be honest also. I mean, I do think that this document needs to be honest, but
Right.
in a way that is that doesn't offend unnecessarily. Doesn't mean that we won't necessarily offend, but if there is a way to have this conversation in a way that people can hear us and that we can still do good work and get our point across, I think that that's our responsibility in this committee. So how are you?
The only other feedback I had was just grammatically, and this doesn't have to be something we decide on now, but I've heard feedback that demonstrated violence, that the word demonstrated is awkward. This period also.
We've had trouble. We've had trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, I know we've talked about that before, but maybe if we can brainstorm on that word, I don't know.
Okay.
Well, I think that we, to see if that word is awkward or not, we need to look at the history.
Right. Not a different meaning at all. Still being absolutely historically accurate, but just a different word that has a similar meaning. Demonstrated, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Nathan's.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Do you have another?
Nathan, Mr. Wordsmith. I kind of get what you guys are talking about. Demonstrated was here and there kind of stuff, and it was. So I see the point of maybe changing that to something that encompasses changing it. Nathan would be the guy.
Well, I agree. I think that's probably not the best word. And I agree that we're not trying to change the concept, but maybe a better word could be maybe exacted or something, but something along those lines. Demonstrated just seems sort of neutral.
It's not the right word. It is
Perpetuated.
Perpetuated.
I got text enacted.
Yeah, I've heard enacted as well.
All right. Well, let's I've written all those down, and everyone kind of think about that. And just to kind of get through this document today, we can go back to this, but definitely demonstrated is out. All right. Next, 3EC. And there are two versions. There you go. There we go. Okay. Whereas the city of Sonora is committed to seeking a thoughtful way to heal the wounds of racism and inequities of the past, to reconcile the divide of the present, and taking steps to make sure that racial profiling and acts of aggression against Black, Indigenous, and people of color will no longer have a place in silence in this community. And we rewrote that to be, whereas the city of Sonora is committed to seeking a thoughtful and inclusive way to heal the wounds and inequities, to reconcile the divide, and to take steps to make sure that acts of violence, aggression, or exclusion will not happen against any marginalized groups, including but not limited to Black, Indigenous, people of color, those living in poverty, those unhoused, those with mental and physical disabilities, or members of the LGBTQIA+ community. There was a word I just said that I didn't like. Will not happen. I don't love that word, but anyhow, how are people feeling about that? Now just sort of a little background, it's expanded to include those living in poverty, homeless, and those with mental and physical disabilities and member of LGBTQIA plus, just to acknowledge that there are many forms, there are many wounds, and there are many forms, inequities, and that people experience.
Yeah. You know, what I like of the inclusiveness of that paragraph is that it gathers the feedback of many people that have come to the meetings during public comment and have talked about why we are not including people in poverty, why we are not talking about unhoused or the LGBTQ community. So I think it really gathers all that information and summarized there.
Yeah. And I think when we think of our community, and I will, admit that this was brought up early on, and I really wanted to keep this focus on race. But I learn, and I've learned a lot. And I just feel like it's really the justice is to expand in this whereas statement, to expand it to include all people who don't feel included, who don't feel included, and who have felt wounds of exclusion and just aggression and violence. And we live in a community where many, many, many people live in poverty. And we live in a community where many, many people are unhoused or poorly housed, and in a community where many people live with mental and physical disabilities, and many people are members of the LGBTQIA community. So, any feedback? Any more feedback about that?
I think it's great that we're being inclusive. I just wonder if we want to acknowledge, without getting too wordy, but if we wanted to say anything about intersectionality. We live in a community where there's also a lot of intersectionality between a lot of these communities as well. I don't know if that's something that should be included, but something to be mindful of.
How would you include that? I'm just curious. It's just I can't.
Well, I think that naming all of it is talking about intersectionality. It's not exclusive, but it's inclusive. And also, I think it's providing opportunities to see that there is not one thing or the other. That if we talk about racial exclusion, it's not that, it's only that. We can talk about racial inclusion, and we can talk also about people living in poverty and unhoused. So we need to consider all those needs in the community. So it is a great first step.
Yes.
Right.
And I also think that it acknowledges the opening statement in this Martin Luther King Jr. letter, quote, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And
Yes.
That's really what this is talking about.
Right.
It's a whereas statement.
Right. I think the only suggestion, and maybe we can think on this and then not finalize it, but if we did want to include anything about intersectionality at the very end, after we're listing the groups, those unhoused, those with mental and physical disabilities, or members of the LGBTQIA plus community, also recognizing that oppressions are often overlapping and reinforcing.
I'm writing, sorry,
Mhm.
I'm not ignoring you. Overlapping, and what was the last word?
Reinforcing.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's kind of ponder. I think intersectionality is I think it's not a hard word to understand. I think it's a word that's not very common in most people's vocabulary.
Right.
So,
My concern about including new words, although we know what that means, is that if a term like equity has created so much misinformation and
Right.
disinformation, I would prefer that we not include new terms when we are at the end of our work. I totally agree that intersectionality is something that is important, but it is not something that we could include right now and start the conversation when we are writing the end of the
Right.
declaration.
You're
I
right.
agree with Mercedes on that.
I don't think I included, I didn't say the word, what I read earlier. I think we just kind of described, but yeah, I agree.
Isn't the list itself an expression of intersectionality? I mean, you're not specifically saying that someone might have one or more of these attributes, but you're listing the attributes. So it seemed to me that there would be some overlap.
Often there are, I know people who are living in poverty or unhoused, have mental and physical disabilities, and are members of I know people who have every single one, who are part of every single one of these groups. So,
Yes. Okay.
Anyhow, so, I wrote it down. We can all still think about it. I kind of shy away from those words that seem so specific to, I don't know. They're not specific to the population as a whole. I don't think they.
And going back to the 3EC, so are we all in agreement that it would be okay to have this statement?
I am.
I am.
I am muted. I am.
I was just kind of curious about one thing, and I'm always concerned about the danger of if you list off one group and then you don't list another, that someone's going to be offended. So we have the phrase people of color, but we also list off indigenous, which it might be a racial group, but it's also more because they were here. But if you mention, say, Black and people of color, but then you're not mentioning Pacific Islanders or Asians or Hispanics, I'm just always wondering, could that leave us open to like, well, why are you focusing on this ethnic group and not mine? So it's something to consider.
It is a great question.
Yeah, throughout the document, there's several times where certain racial groups were mentioned, and I just would be concerned about, offending someone in this way, to the extent that we can.
Yeah. Thank you, Nathan. I really think it's a great question, because although people of color is a term that has been applied to Latinos or Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islander, and some other ethnicities, there are also sometimes is mentioned separate, like people of color and Asian American, for example. But in a general term, it encompasses many ethnicities.
And it also says including but not limited to, and then starts the list.
Right.
And I would maybe suggest putting people of color and then Black, Indigenous, because I did the same thing. I went Black, Indigenous, people of color, but in my mind, I'd already Black and Indigenous as people of color as well. But I also, you know, with Hispanic and Salvadoran, all of that as well, I lumped in there. So maybe moving that in front so that you kind of have that everybody picture in your head, and then it kind of labels. I don't know. I see people of color encompassing everybody.
Yeah. It's just that often in the writing, it's Black, Indigenous, people of color. That's how it's presented.
Yeah.
Typically in the writing is all. And I just wonder if if it's people of color, Black, Indigenous, it's like if one thinks that Black and Indigenous are part of people of color, it's like, so why are you saying Black Indigenous now? I mean, I don't know, that's not working quite.
Because the acronym used generally is generally accepted is BIPOC, BIPOC,
Right.
which spell out is Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So it's something that is generally accepted all over the United States.
When it's written out, Mercedes, is it ever Black, Indigenous, and people of color, or is it? I mean, I sort of feel like I always see it as Black, Indigenous, people of color, but
yeah, well, the acronym, like I said,
right.
is BIPOC, BIPOC. Right. So it just happened that here it has been spelled out.
Right. Can you live with that?
What if you mixed it up?
I'm sorry. Are we a 60-minute meeting or a 90-minute meeting today?
90.
I was thinking even just, you know, mixing it up, because we have the color and then we have the poverty and then we have the mental health and we have the physical. I mean, what if we just scrambled the words? There was no particular order, as long as it still sounded nice, but you know what I mean?
People of color, then Black, then
people of
Indigenous.
color, living in poverty, Indigenous, Black, physical disabilities, you know, mixing them up and putting them in different places.
It's just in the literature, this is how it is presented. Be Black, Indigenous, people of color. I mean, when you, in the literature, that's just how it's presented. That's why I think it's written that way here. And often it's, you know, it's written out once and then it put in BIPOCs in parentheses. And then from that point on in the document, it's just BIPOC.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that when I saw that. So thanks for the clarification. I didn't know that acronym was there.
Yeah, it's not in this one. I'm not sure that we use that phrase anywhere else. But anyhow, so let's just kind of play with that and see what maybe Elisa, if you could kind of play with that and see what it would look like.
Yeah.
So the big one, 4A is whereas the city of Sonora condemns any form of racially motivated hate, intolerance, and white supremacy culture. And we would like to take that out.
And this is another example of our internal conversations and external conversations. If we are willing to build bridges, so we are willing to walk to the center of anything that we can agree on, because it's not one thing or the other. It's not all or nothing. So I agree on deleting 4A.
I do too. And what I will say is it's not saying that we individually don't believe in there's a problem with white supremacy culture. We're not saying that. Some of us do, some of us do not. But we have to meet our community in a place where they can hear us and work with us. And look at this as a stepping stone, not an end goal. So
I'm with you guys. I've been talking about getting rid of that quite a long time, or changing it. So I appreciate you guys really taking the community's words and stuff in and considering the inclusiveness and making sure that everyone feels welcome and listened to.
I would also just like to acknowledge, I feel like it's our responsibility as being representatives of the marginalized and people of color on this committee. As a Native Hawaiian, I will be very vulnerable here and completely honest. It's painful for me, you guys, to remove this. It's painful. However, I see the need, and I want nothing else but unification for our community on this topic. And this is a building block, 1,000%. And so passing this resolution to me is the priority in this moment. But I would also just like to acknowledge specifically people of color in our community who are feeling pain over this decision, because I feel that too. And I feel like it's important for someone on this committee to be a voice for that pain. And so for the sake of time, I'll leave it at that. But if anyone has further questions on that or would like to see a different perspective, please reach out.
I mean, I will also say as not a person of color, it's painful for me to take this out, but I think it's the respectful thing to do, and not at the expense of marginalized people, but just to be able to keep this conversation moving.
Absolutely, yes.
And that's our responsibility as well,
Right.
for everyone.
I'm there as well. Nikki said it, Nicolette, you said it very well, but I feel that way with the racial profiling word as well, because I do feel like, again, we are taking a backseat to what we're here for because of feelings of those who don't want to acknowledge that that is a true issue. And I do feel like we are, again, kind of silented. But I too agree that, we need to build inclusiveness and togetherness. But again, we're always kind of mollifying and taking a back seat. And I do feel like that's what we're doing here.
Thank you, Alicia. And thank you, Nikki and Colette, for saying that. And, one of the reasons it is important to look back to history is because what we are doing right now is exactly what happened every time that this kind of work happens. We can see it in the feminist movement. We can see it in any progressive movement. Usually, people of color are the ones that take the impact and have to compromise so the rest can find palatable what is said. It is not easy, and I know that before us, many people have tried to do and have done amazing things, and there is always backlash. So we are really sacrificing some things for the sake of moving forward. And we really hope that the community sees that and understand that, and that can come together to continue moving forward.
I couldn't have said it better. Thank you, Mercedes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mercedes.
I agree, and I've talked to Mercedes quite a bit, and I've pledged to her that even after this committee, after whatever happens, I'm still going to be a continuation part of her groups and conversations, because in the reality of things, we focus on the things we agree on, we can move mountains. The things that we don't agree on, we're probably never going to, but the things that we agree on really can move mountains. So I'm going to pledge that I continue to, I'm going to say educate, but partake in a lot of the continuation after this. If the committee goes, if it stays, whatever, I'm going to be committed to this.
Thank you, Terry. Colette, I wonder if we could pause for a moment so we can breathe a little bit and maybe time for
Public comment.
public comment. Yeah.
Okay. Right. I am going to open this back to public comment, and now you could actually speak about the resolution, because that's what we're talking about. So if you have comments about any of the changes or that you've heard or the conversations, please raise your hand. And if you can't use if the raise your hand function doesn't come up on your computer, just raise your hand and I'll try to find you. Okay, Megan Mills, I see your hand raised. You're on.
I'm here. I'm just trying to get my technology sorted. Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Colette. I just wanted to reiterate what was stated by members of the committee, that it is a disappointment and a concession to remove white supremacy from this document, or white supremacy culture. But in the interest of furthering the work of the resolution, I support that decision. I actually don't support the decision, but I will concede to that decision because it seems like that's what's needed to get the work of the resolution done. The other thing I wanted to mention is that in 4J, a list of identities is listed out: race, sex, national origin, religion, sexual orientation, etc. And the one that's missing for me that I really feel is crucial to include is gender identity, because of anti-trans legislation and because of attacks on transgender people in our community. I feel that is very important to include in that list of social locations and identities. So I would ask that that be considered to be added to the document. And that's all from me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Megan. Margaret, I think your hand was up next.
Yes, I have several different comments. One is just, it seems like some of the things that say whereas could be therefores, like when the city of Sonora is committed to doing something or pledges to do something, that sounds more like a therefore than a whereas. Back into AC, I think when we were talking about contributors, I thought maybe participating members might be a better word. And in 1CE, where it talked about Indigenous and Mexicans and other people as minorities, I think Indigenous and Mexicans might have been the majority, and it's almost making them a smaller group than they might have been at the time of the gold rush.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then in 4J, there's just an IT apostrophe S, and I think it would be better not to have that be a contraction right there, just to say it is, just for whatever. And then the other thing is I feel like the whereas are important, but the therefores are really important. That's where things can be addressed. Originally, you folks talked about collecting data and trying to figure out what was going on first, and then you said, no, we'll do this first. But it needs to mention things that could be measured and tracked and that the city has control over. And some of those things could be things that might fall in the category of white supremacy culture or whatever. It just might be one aspect of it that this could actually address in the therefores in terms of specifying things that can be measured and tracked and that the city has some say over.
Thanks, Margaret. Tom.
Yeah, it's the discussion around BIPOC. I just did a little research while you were all chatting about it and found that it's usually referred to Black and people of color to note that the Black community is hit at a much harsher rate. So I just thought I'd point that out as to why that might might be presented that way very often, if that helps.
That does. Thanks. Tristan.
Yes, I'm sort of wondering. It seems like California history has sort of slipped by the side, and when California was captured from the Mexicans in the Mexican War, the natives were not permitted to be citizens. That didn't end until 1924. In 1851, when Sonora was founded, well, the next year, that's when the genocide against the natives was begun. In 1856, the first scout bounty was put out by the state of California for 25 cents, and in 1860, that was raised to $5. And natives didn't get the citizenship and the right to vote till 1924. That sort of takes a lot of these arguments. There's a whole bunch that goes with that history. It takes a lot of these arguments that have been going on and makes sort of riffraff out of them. There is a history, and the history is horrid. But we do have to progress, but it is the truth.
Thanks, Tristan. Anyone else? I don't see any more hands. We'll open this up, hopefully at the end. Oh,
There is one.
phone with phone number that ends with 5354.
Keep going back, way back in history. I'm not exactly young, and I wasn't here for a lot of this stuff. My parents were not here for this. My grandparents were not born yet. They're all dead. I'm old enough to have kids who have kids, so now we're going back 6 generations to bring up the past, and somehow some people seem to think that's a healing thing. I would not agree. I know a lot of people who are a lot more recently involved, like as in World War II. It's a pretty ugly situation. I could get into some details. I'll just leave it at we seem to be able to get over it and not have to pick and fret over who did what to who. And I know a lot of people on a lot of different sides during that war.
Okay.
So going back and dwelling on the past, I just tell you, that's not helpful. Scene from a movie. It's just a freaking comic book movie. But Aquaman's sitting on the noose of Hassan, so he's just spilling his guts, telling the truth. And one of the things that comes out of his mouth is that Wonder Woman, who's Amazon is there, is that, yeah, I know we had trouble. That was before my time because they'd been at war. And sometimes look at that and go, there's more wisdom there than a lot of people trying to fix things. Nikki, it was a city mechanic not very long back that was from Hawaii. I don't know why everybody thought he was fine, and you feel somehow there's some sort of issues. On his profiling stuff, just FYI, you might notice that Two has got a little dark complexion to him, so I don't know what his background is because I really don't care. But I guess he's a blend. Chief Stinson had a Japanese wife. Dwayne Ellis was also chief of police, Asian girlfriend at least at one time. And from 1960 to 1982, the chief of police was Ron Wano. We just call him Chief Wano, and I believe he was full-blooded Miwok. But if I look up profiling, it's defined as dealing with police. So, yeah, if they could take offense, there's very, very good reason for it. You go ahead and do a search yourself, and you'll find it. far as white supremacy culture goes, well, it's defined as having things like, being punctual, having work
30
ethic,
seconds.
or written language, and all sorts of things that you would find that you'd want in an employee. So I guess if somebody doesn't want to be white, they have to be other than what you want as an employee. Sounds like institutional racism to me. You get the point? You're heading in the wrong direction. There's
That's
a
your
lot
time.
of problems here. Bye.
If you're calling on me, you're muted, Colette. I see your mouth moving.
Sorry. That's why you weren't responding. Sorry.
Yeah, I was waiting. Quickly, I want to say, to heal, sometimes we have to revisit very troubling topics and times. From day one, I was an outsider. I was really shunned on and really not given the time of day. And I don't feel that way no more. I feel like I could call any of the individuals on here or most of the people that actually log into the Zoom and we can have a conversation. So our goal is really to heal divide. And we got to do that the best way possible. Sometimes it's going to come up of topics that we made in the past and stuff that's way before our times. I'm not a perfect person. I make mistakes every single day of my life. I'm human. But I'm willing to sit down and listen and talk with everybody about it. And if it's sometimes troubling, that's what it's got to be to move forward. So that mindset of, we're just picking the scab off every single time, I don't think we are. I've seen mountains move with Mercedes, with Nikki, with Colette. I know that their understanding of me has gotten a lot better and they're really appreciative, and I'm very appreciative of them. But we have to sometimes talk about very bad times in our past that have nothing to do with us. So we shouldn't be getting aggressive. We shouldn't be getting mad. We shouldn't get upset because it's not me that we're talking about. We're talking about times in the past and how we healed that going forward. If there's a genuine concern, I want them to be able to say, hey, Darren, this is my genuine concern, and us have a sit down talk about it. And I think that we lose that a lot when we just run back and talk to people that are not outside of our circles. So, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Thanks, Darren.
Are we back to the committee? Or?
I think so.
Okay. So, one thing I want to say, well, thank you. I want to thank you, who was Margaret, that provided some concrete suggestion for our statement. And I also want to say that often when I am listening the different comments during the public comment, it reminds me of that analogy of the blind people that were touching an elephant, and one would touch like one leg and would say, oh, it's this. Another would touch the tail and say, oh no, it's this. And so on. So we have never lived in a fully equitable society. So none of us knows how that looks. And I think there is nothing perfect yet, but there are beautiful attempts, and there is a nation in progress in many ways. And I like the fact that we all together can bring the full picture of what that is, what that looks like, and there is some pain on that, and there are mistakes, and there are going back and moving forward, but it's something that we need to do together, because we have different visions, different perspectives. We grew up in different ways. So it is not that one perspective is better than the other. And I think that is one of the reasons we are willing to compromise, to be able to bring to the table the different perspectives and to learn from each other.
Nicely said. Thanks. All right, now I was sort of flipping through this while Margaret was talking, and now I don't know where we were. I'm sorry. We were at white supremacy culture, I believe. Is that correct? We didn't go into the next. No, we did.
Yeah, we were doing 4J.
We were doing 4J. And we're to add, Megan asked about gender identity. Margaret asked us to change to it is committed, not it's committed. And I thought, good suggestions. Okay, so for BC, the rewritten whereas statement is the city of Sonora pledges to engage individuals more impacted by social inequities, fostering a community where all ethnicities, cultural backgrounds, sexual orientation, and religion feel safe, represented, and included within our community. And that is not very different than the one before, the one that it is replacing, but there was a difference. How do people feel about that?
Good.
Okay.
I like it.
Yeah. Okay. And then we take a leap. We deleted, whereas our city aspires to be welcoming and inclusive with a commitment to engagement and ongoing dialogue, because I really feel like there are other statements that really include, we felt like there were other statements that included that. And then there was talk at a previous meeting about combining 5G, 5J, and 5K. And is there on page 3, is there a 5J, 5? There is not, probably. Is there a, yes. So this is, we really cut this one down a little bit, but I think it really flows much better. Whereas Sonora's diversity will continue to change, the city acknowledges its responsibility to be culturally aware and socially and racially equitable. And that it brought all of those really, I think, together and just flows a little bit more easily.
I really like that.
You do?
I do, but I don't like the and socially and racially, and then another and, like, it just, I know that what goes on, so.
Culturally aware, comma, socially aware, comma.
It doesn't, it's almost gonna have to stay that way. I don't see a.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no other way.
I mean, I kind of, Darren, I felt that. I was like, and I didn't like it, but it didn't work otherwise. So, I mean, yeah, we can play with that.
I think if you were gonna do it that way, you'd have to take out the and put in culturally aware, socially aware, and racially equitable, but then it's on the same point.
What about culturally and socially, culturally, socially, and racially aware and equitable?
Say that again, Jim.
What about, so culturally, comma, socially, comma, and that still would be a problem. Never mind. I was because you still have the two ands. I was thinking culturally, socially, racially aware and equitable. Oh, no.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, culturally, socially, racially aware and equitable.
I could get on board with that. Collect writing.
Yeah, I can too. There's something about keeping culturally aware separate that gave it a priority that I kind of liked, but because in this combination.
Then list culturally last. Go socially, racially, and culturally aware and equitable. that would still pair up culturally aware, but it would mean it for all three.
I'm almost there.
Or you can just flip them. Acknowledges its responsibility to be socially and racially equitable and culturally aware.
But that still has all the
And
I know, but they're
it sounds
more
better.
split up.
Yeah.
There's space between them.
Why not just say responsibility to be equitable and social and culturally aware? I mean, we don't have to say socially and racially. We could just say equitable.
So far, I'm liking the responsibility to be socially and racially equitable and culturally aware myself, but okay, I've written this down. Let's kind of, we're hopefully going to meet on, I think on Thursday. So if we don't have time, we'll come back to this tonight, or we will, we can come back to it Thursday night. I don't know. I really don't have trouble with two ands, but okay. The next one is 8A, whereas the city of Sonora recognizes this as an historic moment to be seized upon and believes it cannot answer this time of silence. And forget the C.L. Martin Luther King Jr.'s 1963 letter from a Birmingham jail. This is the one that we are going to move to the end of the document. And this is another one that we actually listened to members of this committee and the community about the word complicit, and actually the council. So we talked at the very beginning about moving this to the end of the document, which I still think is a nice idea. So the next one then is 8D, and this is the last whereas statement. And this is the one where that originally, we didn't mind it so much, but we didn't like the words educated opinions. We thought that was kind of obnoxious. So, and I think that was mine, but maybe not, I don't know. Anyhow, so we worked on that, and it's whereas we understand that we cannot reconcile the divide of the present without a foundation of curiosity towards those with whom we disagree. I think it should say and here, and we must also, and we must bring a commitment to the consideration of different points of view. So different points of view to replace educated opinions. It's not the same, but how do people feel about that?
I'm not a fan of the word curiosity. I don't know why. I feel like that. I don't know. I don't like that word in there.
You know, really? Huh. I mean, I think it's one of the most important words in the document.
I really like for one reason, because if we approach someone with curiosity, means like asking questions without judgment, in my view.
A better understanding, I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
It also, I think, is the secret to any successful relationship of any kind. Friendship, marriage. Without curiosity, it's there. I mean, I just think, and also just in community, I think it's a really important word. So at least I almost always agree, but curiosity really.
Well, I wonder what comes to your mind, Alisa, when you hear that
think
word.
about it. I think of just like if I'm reading it, I'm kind of thinking on some of the discussion and enacting discussion. And I tend to think I'm curious, like, I don't know, I think curious in my way almost is like, maybe not so much, but how do I say it? It's not not condescending, but I'm like, I'm curious. I'm almost like it has like to me, if I'm gonna have it, I'm like kind of curious on why. I don't know. I don't know
get
how to
you.
explain it. I feel like it
Implied
could be
disagreement.
kind of condescending, like, well, I'm curious on why you have your idea. I don't know. It could be another word, or we can leave it, but I just feel like the word foundation of curiosity. I don't know. I just feel like it's a little.
So you said
Um,
something very important. So in your mind, somehow bring something about condescending. And I wonder why.
It could be that, it kind of went with what we took out before, with the thoughts of the opinion that we took out before. So that could be it, that I'm still kind of there. I guess if I would to understand that neither we can exit the divide of the present without a foundation of I guess inquisitive wouldn't work, but I don't know. Maybe it's fine. It could just be me, but that's just kind of where my mind goes.
I mean, I've underlined it, and
and I'll look at other words too, and kind of play around. I don't know, kind of silly, I Curious George, I'm not gonna lie, it comes to my mind. So it's kind of that I'm curious, it's the immature curious, I don't know. That's where I go.
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining. Let's see if that could be helpful. Like when looking at the past, when somebody in the public comment said that in the past, during the Gold Rush era, the indigenous and Mexican were the majority. So with curiosity, I could ask some questions, right? So how that happened? What was happening during that time? What was the transition between Mexico and the United States? Or I could, without curiosity, go into a judgment about like what the Mexicans were doing in California at that time. Why they were here, they were invading, or there were undocumented people, or, so in my mind, the curiosity is about kind of asking the whys and the what, and so what. So I don't know if that is helpful or not.
What if you added positive curiosity?
Positive curiosity?
Foundation of positive curiosity.
Or of foundation of curiosity without judgment of those with whom we disagree.
What do you think, Alisa?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make such a big deal out of the word.
Oh, it's okay.
I think it does work if you add without the judgment. But, kind of hearing and rereading and hearing others' perspective, it does work. It gets the job done. So it would be fine.
Although, I mean, I actually think the distinction for it not to be curiosity with content, with judgment or with a negative response, I'm curious why you would say such a thing. I mean, you can be, I mean,
I think I use the word curiosity all the time. And I think in this sense, we're talking about the vision, right? Like the vision versus currently how our society is kind of acting in this moment. And right now, a lot of times it feels like when you have two people with different opinions or points of view, we tend to put walls up and not really want to share experience and engage to try to understand each other. But it's like these walls go up, and because we differ, it's like a stalemate. And so if we can approach each other with a foundation of curiosity instead of that's the bridge builder, right? Like that's the instead of, I don't agree with you, I'm done with you, blah, blah, blah. It's, well, tell me about your experience, or why do you feel that way? And help me understand, instead of the quick, I guess, assumption that they're just wrong. And like, I feel like what Mercedes actually, there was just a really beautiful display of curiosity without even planning it. Elisa, when you said you weren't sure about the word, Mercedes said, well, what is it about the word? Or tell me why. I think
Well,
that's the
yeah.
vision.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We can't ever be successful here without curiosity.
Mhm.
We just battle without curiosity. So I don't know. But let's, we can work on that. You guys, we got through the resolution.
First part.
First
Right.
part.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. The whereas statements, excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
It sounds like in general, we agree with those statements, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah.
With different levels of discomfort, I think. But
Yeah, with a
but-
couple things.
Mercedes or Nikki, would you like to read the resolution? Do you guys have a copy of, do you have it? Can I send it to you?
Oh yeah, I do have. In fact, I can.
Put it up there. You can share.
Yeah, give me a second. I want to.
And it's 5:27, so we're on a 3-minute timeline.
And just to, for the sake of time, while Mercedes is bringing that up, I just wanted to, for the public, we have such great engagement tonight, and I would love to keep this going. And for their sake, I would love to know when we'll know if we're having a meeting on Thursday, if we might know that. And then I also wanted to just encourage the public. I feel that we have really tried to write this resolution so that everyone can get behind it from many different backgrounds. And that if there are still pieces of this that don't feel inclusive, or that if there's still, changes or edits, to maybe take a look at that and let us know. Because I think I'm speaking for everyone on the committee when I say that we truly want this to be a community piece. And I think we've tried really hard to get there. So I would just love to know if there's how we'll know about the Thursday meeting so that we can try to all be there.
Thank you, Nikki. And I would suggest that we have different voices. So if each member of the committee would like to read one paragraph, that would be great. And I can get started just with the quote from Birmingham Jail. Okay. Social Equity Committee Resolution 31422. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds. Martin Luther King Jr., letter from a Birmingham jail.
Nikki, do you want to go next? Just because you're next on my screen.
Whereas the city of Sonora acknowledges the Tuolumne Band of Miwok Indians and the Chicken Ranch Tribe of Miwok Indians as the original inhabitants and stewards of this land, who continue to be strong, beloved leaders and impactful contributors to this community. And
Darren.
Whereas the city of Sonora affirms its wish to be known not only for its beauty of its place in the Sierra Nevada hills and its vibrant gold country history, the city wishes to also be known for its champion of racial equity and justice and acceptance. And
Great. Elisa.
Which one? I'm lost.
1CE.
1CE. The city of Sonora is proud of its gold rush history, which created opportunities for many people. This period also demonstrated violence, exclusion, and unjust laws against Indigenous, Chinese, Mexican, Chilean, and other minorities. And
Nathan. 3EC.
Okay. Whereas the city of Sonora is committed to seeking a thoughtful and inclusive way to heal the wounds and inequities, to reconcile the divide, and to take steps to make sure that the acts of violence, aggression, or exclusion will not happen again against any marginalized groups, including but not limited to Black, Indigenous, people of color, those living in poverty, those unhoused, those with mental and physical disabilities, or members of the LGBTQIA+ community.
And Jim.
4J, correct?
Yes.
Whereas the city of Sonora pledges to work towards engaging residents who are more impacted by social equities and fostering a community where all ethnicities, cultural backgrounds, sexual orientation, and religion can feel safe to participate and feel represented and included within the community. And
no, we didn't read 4J, right?
I think that was he read. So the one on this, the updated one
on the screen is the new one.
Right. I'll read 4J. Whereas the city of Sonora proclaims it's committed to diversity and equity and an atmosphere of inclusiveness, and it respects the dignity of every person without regard to race, color, sex, religion, ancestry, national origin, immigration status, marital status, age, disability, sexual orientation, and political affiliation. The city denounces all hate and discrimination in any form. And
so I read the wrong one, didn't I?
yeah, it's okay.
I read the old 5BC.
It's okay.
I'll read the new.
Oh, you read the old one? Okay.
I read the old 5BC. So I'll read the new one. Whereas the city of Sonora pledges to engage individuals more impacted by social inequities, fostering a community where all ethnicities, cultural backgrounds, sexual orientation, and religion feel safe, represented, and included within our community. And
great.
And whereas Sonora's diversity will continue to change, the city acknowledges its responsibility to be culturally aware and socially and racially equitable. And
Nikki, you're back on.
Whereas we understand that we cannot reconcile the divide of the present without a foundation of curiosity towards those with whom we disagree, we must also bring a commitment to the consideration of different points of view. And
Darren, you're the closer.
The city of Sonora recognizes this as a historic moment to be seized upon and believes it cannot answer this time with silence.
Okay, good job, you guys. Jackie, you need to, if you could correct me, but I think we're on for Thursday, and because of schedules, it will need to be at 4. I was hoping it could be a little bit later, but it needs to be at 4, and it will be, I believe, an hour and a half. Am I correct?
Yeah, I was under understanding that it was at 5, but I can make it for 4.
I think Nathan has a class so he can't do the 5. So
okay. And if there aren't any additional attachments that need to be added, I can post that today.
Okay. Well, I was going to I can send you the resolution that we just read, and then have that. I can do that as soon as we're finished here.
Perfect.
And then I will make changes for it for the next. There are a couple of changes I think that the public especially asked for, but also members of the committee. So I'll make those changes and have them ready for Thursday's meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jackie, for accommodating us, and thank you everyone for this good work. It's 5:35, so I think this meeting's over.
I have a question, Colette. I won't be able to be at Thursdays.
Thank you, everyone.
So would you like me to just email you the homework you gave me to kind of reword or
Sure.
Okay, so I'll
Yes.
just email you that by
Thank you.
Thursday.
Thanks.
Elisa, if I can also ask if, and we should probably all do this in advance too, we are on a pretty crazy time crunch for this resolution. So in order to finish in time, if we can all look at the therefore statements and make some notes before Thursday and bring those. And then Elisa, if you wanted to email Colette or myself, I'm happy to share your thoughts on the therefore statements on your behalf. And I'm sure any of us would do that for you.
Yes, and also I'm in the, just so you know, and this was Mercedes' suggestion, she always has these good suggestions. She asked me to put all the wherefore statements on one side of the page and all the therefores on the other, so we could really see what, we could kind of connect the thoughts and the actions and see what we're talking about in a different
That'll
way.
be real
So,
nice to see. Yeah.
yeah, it makes, and I've started that. I was hoping I would have that ready for tonight, but I don't, but I've started it. I just have to add the therefore statements. So, all right, with that. It's dinner
Thank
time.
you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Jackie.